this is actually a first good switch into, the joining of real estate and obviously divorce.
Absolutely.
So now what are going to be those instances where people let go of that sub 3% interest rate?
Yeah.
One of them obviously is going to be divorce,
Right.
because you can't, there's divorce, job change, growing family, shrinking family. Some of those things are, those things are never going to change.
Right.
The people that we, who aren't going to put their homes on the market are the Jordan and Jamies with 2 children.
Right.
That got their home, they lived there. It was going to be their forever home, and you may have moved because you wanted a slight upgrade, a slight downgrade, a bigger yard.
Yeah.
No, you're there forever.
Yeah.
But I think an interesting question is, and I'll put it back on you, starting in 2020, we've talked.
Yeah.
The divorce, is market the right word?
Sure.
Yeah. The divorce market has been interesting. Tell me, and put a little real estate spin on it for me.
Yeah.
But take me through the pandemic up until now and what we've seen with the divorce market.
Let me kind of start backwards.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, you asked the question, you said, how does a low interest rate family who's stuck in their place, what are they supposed to do? Or what are the circumstances that they leave? Well, obviously in a divorce, one family becomes 2. And so the issue of the house is always massively significant in every case.
Yep.
Not only because it's familiar, it's a grounding space for kids, it's something that there's a large emotional component to it as well.
Huge sentimental and
Huge.
actual value.
Huge. And so a lot of times, right now, I would very much urge my clients to say, look, if you're planning on moving at some point in the future, whether it be 5 years, whether it be 10 years, do it now. Get into your own space, make it your own, start a new chapter. Let's get rid of sort of that past. It doesn't mean it was bad. It just means let's move forward and find your own space. Now, we're in situations where in a divorce, one party either buys the other party out, meaning there's a cash settlement or there's some other property distribution to offset the equity in the house, or it's sold. And if mom wants the house and dad wants the house and they can't reach an agreement, then it's a forced sale.
Gotta sell it, yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of situations now where both people are like, look, I can afford this house, right, on my own income or with my support payments. I want to be here. I have a low interest rate. It's a good investment. I want the house. And the other partner says, well, no, I'm in the same situation. I want the house.
It's interesting through my eyes. Low supply, high demand.
There you go. Right. So that's a big conundrum is, do you buy the other person out? And if so, is someone going to pay a premium?
Are the people just quit claiming their interest over to the other party? And because from a lending standpoint, if 2 people are on title and 2 people are on the mortgage, how's that kind of taken care of?
That's a great question. And that's a very common question that I get from my clients as well. So it depends how the house is originally titled. And if it's in both of their names, then a simple quitclaim deed usually takes it out of joint tenancy into, tenants.
But lender is going to have to qualify a single person as opposed to using both incomes, which I'm assuming becomes a challenge for you.
That's right, all the time. And it depends, again, who's refinancing. There's usually a transfer through a title and then some requirement within a certain period of time to refinance. And if there's somebody who's receiving support, that person has to receive at least 6 months of support in order to qualify at their new income to qualify at that rate to get a refinance. But if it's something where take the non-earner of the family who's receiving support and that person wants to keep the house and there's a deal structured where, let's just call it he's keeping the house, that person would have to refinance using their support and whatever
So they're going to lose that interest rate anyway.
They would lose that interest rate. Exactly.
Oh, so the interest rate becomes a little less of a binding factor to the home. Is that correct or no?
Again, it depends who it's titled to. But if it's in the situation that I was readily thinking of, it's somebody who's only on the mortgage and they're both on title, so they don't have to refinance. And if that's the other situation, but you're right. You're absolutely right. If you have to refinance anyway, you lose that rate.
Are you hoping my clients get divorced?
No, I'm very happily married. I've got 2 great kids. I believe in the institution of marriage. I'm just here to help people out through a tough time.
Got it. In the, hopefully undesired moment that, you do have to get a divorce, how can you help set up real estate in such a way where it doesn't become as problematic, or is there a way?
I really don't think there is a way, to be honest. And I think everybody always wants to ask me, how do I divorce plan? How do I set myself up? Can I do things surreptitiously to plan? No. It never works like that. And at the end of the day, it's truly a math problem. And it's ostensibly, if you keep the house, how does it work? If your partner keeps the house, how does that work? There really is no good way, to be honest. But one thing I want to go back to, and what we were talking about earlier, is you mentioned something about how people have, they were stuck inside with each other through the pandemic. And obviously that affects my business tremendously, because when people are fighting, more divorce, right? Yeah. So what I've noticed, which is very interesting, is through the pandemic since 2020 to now, things have changed in the divorce landscape. Court is now, instead of in person, it's on Zoom.
Really?
So it's a lot easier to be mean to somebody when you're a face on a computer screen rather than when you're looking them in the face like I'm doing now. So that, I think, coupled with the fact that everybody kind of loses their outside influences and it's stuck in the house, has increased conflict in divorce tremendously.
You're saying messier divorces?
Way messier. And I'm not saying the number of people are getting divorced is higher. I'm saying that people are fighting about the lamp because they don't have that outlet to go play paddle and do whatever they need to do, right? So it's everybody's fixated on the immediate and, well, he wins and she loses, and it's a very zero-sum game, which I've noticed, which has been a very difficult transition, I think, for a lot of people.
My assumption was that there were more divorces during lockdown and kind of when we had to stay at home. Is that true?
It kind of goes back to that last point I made. I think people were scared of the uncertainty and to say, look, there's enough uncertainty out there with the pandemic and where am I going?
Divorce.
Let's not add this massive calamity to our life and this disruption. But again, at the same point, the court cases that were going on and the divorces that were happening got wackier.
Oh, wow.
And so that's what I'm saying is conflict, I think, is tremendously increased. And so I think this whole transition, what I think, the prophecy that I'll credit you with when we did our first podcast and saying people were buying larger homes because of the thought that they would be stuck at home has sort of come true from my perspective. And so that phenomenon with everybody at home, again, bigger real estate purchases, I think, more real estate purchases, people moving to larger places, and there's an urgency to move with the lower interest rate. And as a corollary, more conflict because everybody's in the home.
So you're a good example. You work from home X number of days a week, right? 1 day a week?
Maybe.
And Jamie works from home.
Jamie's a couple days a week, so 3-4 days a week.
My wife, who used to be full-time in the office, is full-time at home.
Right.
So I think it's yet to be seen exactly how it'll shake out in the real estate world and like what the needs for spaces, both indoor and outdoor, but also we're talking about huge shifts in the way people live, right? Which are going to have lasting ramifications across, many subsects of the economy, lifestyle, et cetera. So I don't think, either of us know.
Yeah. And I mean, even the difference between commercial real estate and residential real estate, I mean, there had to have been a massive pendulum swing over to the strength in the residential market through the commercial market. I work in the Loop, Clark and Randolph, and, for a while it was a ghost town. And I mean, even now, our office is not at full capacity, and there's other offices that, there's nobody there.
Commercial vacancy, especially office vacancy, is it's a real problem.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm the right person to really speak on, what the solutions are or even where I think it's going.
But I guess the question to you, Ben, is and just going back to this prophecy is have you noticed people stretching themselves, buying larger homes than they believe they can afford because they want that extra space? And by the way, it's a tough dichotomy also because people could afford a lot more with a lower interest rate. Is that continuing, and where is that going?
So the way I'll answer that question is, so typically like the base model, right? Let's think about cars, like what the base model has always been, has always been like the 2-bed, 2-bath garage spot with for $500,000. That's been the base model.
Yeah.
So if anything, the way I would answer it is the base model has increased. So like the base model is now the 3-bed or like the 2+ den people always like to.
Right.
And the challenge is that given the interest rate environment, people still want it for, $550.
Right.
So if you take a look at the other end of that spectrum is, those people who had one beds, they're really challenging to move right now. Yeah. There's fewer buyers for them. And like the sellers, are kind of stuck because, everyone, right?
Wants
even
a
lawyer, right? You need who goes into the office all the time. You still need a space to work from home.
Absolutely.
I work from here 5 days a week, but on the weekends, I want to get away from my children and tuck myself into a corner so that I can get that hour and a half in of work.
Absolutely.
Where are you going to do that? So the 1-bedroom spaces are a challenge. Now, when you take a look at, that next level up with a single family home, and you're the perfect example, the 3-bedroom usually isn't enough anymore, right? So you have 2 children, you have one for, you and Jamie, 2 bedrooms for your kids.
Yep.
Not enough.
Right.
You need that 4th space,
right?
Which
it's utility, just utility. And where it's like it's a workout room, office, guest bedroom. It's
you ask it to do everything.
Yeah,
and then it wasn't as needed in the past, but like having that additional living space, like especially for kids, the big challenge and what we're seeing right now is ultimately in the past what that would mean was increasing your budget, but right now that's not necessarily a possibility. Given, I just got a pre-approval in my inbox this morning for a client who are, they're buying for $900,000. They have high credit scores, it's a consultant and a doctor, and their interest rate on their pre-approval is 6.75, 6.75, right? So while they, I think, need to be in that $1.35 million house, I think that's where they're going to be happy for the long run.
Right.
They're looking at $950. So like desires, and I think this is probably right in your wheelhouse, like desires and financial circumstances don't always line up.
Right.
And I think that is what people have had to come to realize right now is given, interest rates are where they are, supply is where it is. You don't get to choose what happens to the market. Like you have to be able to dance in the market that you're in.
And that's the old adage, can't play the market.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the biggest challenge is people don't want to think of for whatever reason, real estate, people want to think of it as something other than a market.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And I think it's to your point, it's like, it holds such a sentimental value.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And it means so much to people both on the buy side and the sell side.
Right.
That they can't think of it as like a car, right?
Yeah,
the car market is crazy.
Yeah,
slow.
People's lives are built there. They have 20 years full of stuff there. But even in situations that I was finding it's like, going back to that period where hysteria, right? You list your house for $100,000 more than you think you can get for it, and you're actually getting offers for that. And so it makes sense at that point during a divorce. You're like, look, if I'm going to sell my house, might as well be right now because we're going to get top dollar for it.
Yep.